Yo, 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 what it do? What it be, y'all? It's your boy, Agent ANT, back with another Call of Duty Cold War commentary. And I'm back with another episode of History in Hindsight. And last History in Hindsight, I covered all the events leading up to the American Revolution, including the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, and the formation of the First Continental Congress in 1774. And in 1775, the revolution would go into full swing, as in March, Patrick Henry would give the famous "Give Me Liberty" or "Give Me Death" speech. In April, Paul Revere would go on his famous ride, warning of the British coming to raid the colonies, which led to the shot heard around the world at Lexington and Concord. And after the skirmish, there wasn't a question of it wasn't a question anymore of when we were going to go to war. It was officially a war with the British after that. So in May, the Second Continental Congress was formed, which saw George Washington named the commander-in-chief. And in June, just 2 days after, Washington is named commander-in-chief after the Second Continental Congress was formed. Oh, and he was named the commander-in-chief just 2 days after the British defeated the rebels at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Even though it's a British victory, they take more casualties and realize that these colonist rebels are actually a threat and aren't backing down from their fight for freedom, quote unquote, which at first it was just a fight for representation in Parliament and the fight against being taxed without representation in Parliament, because they saw themselves as their own, nation. But, Britain was like, bro, we're Parliament. We don't give no other nation, a seat in Parliament. We kind of just make all of our colonies' decisions for them. And we were like, bro, but we're fucking British, mate. Now we're landowners. We got, type shit, and it was already there were already some wealthy British people there. And that's the whole thing, is these people were British. James Washington, at one point, I'm pretty sure, he was born here, but he was a British colonist. So, that's where shit kind of got ticky-tacky, is the colonists kind of okay, are we British or not? Y'all just kind of dropped us off here, fend for ourselves against the natives, and we've been kind of running shit from here. Yet y'all are still putting tax on us, which was only fair because despite the British quote unquote not helping us, we were getting paper and other supplies for them and shit, and they were still taxing our, I'm sure they were probably taxing wages and shit like that, but we just were nah, let us decide. And not even we, the rebels, the colonists were let us decide how we want to be taxed, or how we're going to be taxed, because it's not we're not out here producing goods. They were out here farming and doing all that shit and making, I think they were even making alcohol, because they were having pubs and shit. Prohibition didn't come until the 20s or 30s or some shit like that. Oh, damn, I was really out here doing shit with the arrow, period. That's crazy. But, so, yeah, that was pretty much the whole thing, is they felt like they weren't British anymore. They were their own nation. Loki already had a little pseudo de facto government. Excuse me. And so yeah, that's pretty much what led to the whole skirmish. And if British probably would have just given us a seat in Parliament and just appeased us, probably would have avoided the whole thing. But British people are stubborn, if nothing else. And especially the wealthy British people, they don't want to lose their wealth, type shit. So, like I said, after that skirmish, there wasn't even a question. We were at war after Lexington and Concord, And I mean, even though they defeated Washington at the Battle of Bunker Hill, even though it was a British victory, they took more casualties than us. And they kind of realized, like, okay, like, these colonists, this isn't no small rebellion. I mean, this is, we might have a problem on our hands. So they kind of realized that they weren't backing down for their fight for freedom or whatever, from their fight for freedom, which at first it was like like I said, it was a fight for tax representation, parliament, and shit like that. And now it was a full-blown war. And despite winning the battle, the British knew they were going to need help if they were going to win the war. So they enlisted the help of the Hessians, which were pretty much Germans who were loyal to the crown. And they were like 30,000 deep and made up like a quarter of the British forces during this time. So the colonist forces tried unsuccessfully to invade Canada and build a stronghold there right at the end of 1775, and that made way for an even more hectic beginning of 1776. Despite taking Moores Creek Bridge in North Carolina early and capturing New Providence Island in the Bahamas, the British ended up evacuating Boston in March, which is still celebrated in Boston today, I believe, as Evacuation Day. And yeah, Bostonians are fucking trolls, but so in June, George Mason, Thomas Ludwell Lee, Robert Carter Nicholas, and James Madison drafted the Virginia Bill of Rights, and that served as a template for the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. States Constitution, and the United States Bill of Rights. I said the U.S. States, the United States. My fault. Wrote that funny, but anyways. But in September 1776, just 3 months after the Declaration of Independence is adopted by Congress, and the British occupy New York after the British and Hessian forces pull up and put pressure on the revolutionaries. And I mean, they occupy New York and they take Long Island and basically pursue George Washington and the rebels throughout the East Coast. And I mean, eventually they caught up with them in Harlem Heights, but again, the colonists held strong and escaped despite taking key battlegrounds. The British were taking heavy losses, and I mean, even though they spent most of the year retreating, the revolutionaries had enough, and General Washington led a dangerous voyage across the freezing Delaware River and captured Trenton, New Jersey from Hessian forces, which, I mean, it was a huge turning point in the war. And the painting of Washington standing on the boat in the middle of the freezing Delaware while Old Glory is being raised is an iconic image in American lore. I mean, you could find, that shit, screams America. But, yeah, so, I mean, even though the British had more men and, I mean, they had more troops, I mean, we were taking them out. I mean, we were pretty much having home field advantage in a sense because, I mean, yeah, they were a better trained army, and they had, I mean, they were the biggest, they were the biggest military and the most successful military in the world at the time. So, I mean, the fact that they were just struggling against these colonists was just, I mean, it was kind of crazy, but at the same time, they kind of didn't play their cards right, which I'll kind of get into here in a minute. So, I mean, after Washington's daring voyage in December of 1777 kind of gave those Hessians a good old American Christmas present, there was more back and forth between the New Americans and the Redcoats. Arnold Benedict was getting slighted and constantly under scrutiny, and despite him stopping the British advancement and winning some key battles himself, Arnold Benedict switched teams and began working for Britain in 1780. But, I mean, by then the war was pretty much dying down, because in 1798 the U.S. and France signed the French alliance, and from there France helped the rebels pretty much secure independence, which isn't really talked about a lot. In 1782 the Articles of Confederation were signed, and in 1787 and 88 the U.S. Constitution was signed and ratified, which pretty much cemented America as its own, independent nation. I mean, were they brave to take on one of, if not the strongest military and navy at the time? Of course. But it's not like we didn't have help from Native Americans, whom, later got massacred and genocided. Plus, the colonists got help from the French. A lot of help from the French, actually. They gave us a lot of guns and, uniforms and shit. But, I mean, also, there were colonists that, that were loyal to the crown, but most of the ones with any political or monetary influence were driven out and exiled in 1775. So, yes, the fight for freedom was an uphill battle. At least, the fight for tax freedom or whatever. So, I mean, what also helped us was the leniency the British gave the rebellious colonists. I mean, it kind of, you could say, helped fuel the flames of the revolution, because really they could have blockaded us and starved us out, then swooped in, got all the treasonous motherfuckers and killed them all, executed them in the square like on some medieval England type shit. But I mean, they thought they could handle this shit with diplomacy, and I mean, that shit wasn't happening. So like I said, we kind of got lucky in that sense, but they also thought it was kind of just like a small rebellion that needed to be quelled. And really, we had a whole government set up. We had a whole de facto government. We had governors, senators, the whole nine. And the whole notion that, it was a government built by just, some blue-collar citizens, by farmers. I mean, it's kind of a lie. I mean, they were farmers in a sense, but George Washington was a wealthy landowner, and he owned slaves. And, I mean, James Madison was literally the richest man in Boston. But, I mean, hey, at least, Washington was out here on the battlefield with his soldiers. I mean, congressmen and even public officials today don't even stay in the states or cities they represent, and they're just completely out of touch with the needs of their populace. And I mean, yes, America was founded on the bravery of some rebellious, wealthy colonists, but it was also built on the labor and blood of African American slaves, who were also, they were also fighting in this war as well. An African American was one of the first casualties of the Revolutionary War. And so yeah, I mean, that's not really talked about a lot, but the false hope, this is not even, that's just African American. Let's not even mention the false hope and tears, pun intended, of Native Americans who believed that once this war had ended, they could live in peace with the winners. Instead, each tribe, big or small, was slaughtered, starved out, or violently forced out of their homeland via death marches or even other means. And of course, that was after European plagues had wiped out a good percentage of them during Columbus's first voyage. But I mean, was Washington heroic, crossing the Delaware? Absolutely. He was willing to die for what he believed in, and that's kind of the American way type shit, but I mean, that's exactly what it is, though. Not to get it, it's not like they were fighting against oppression or tyranny. These guys were literally just fighting because they wanted to choose how they could be taxed, pretty much. They didn't really have any intention of freeing the slaves, you could tell, because the slaves weren't even freed until another 100 years later. Despite the whole all men are created equal line, which is kind of the fuck? So all men are created equal except, you know, brown people and, you know, Native American, you know, blacks and Native Americans, and I mean even Mexicans type shit, you know. French are cool though, or you know, Canadians are cool because they're French and they helped us. But I mean, it's weird. But anyway, but I mean, like I said, were these men brave? Sure, they helped found the country we're in today, and we change history. We might not be where we're at today, which honestly it's 50-50 whether that could be a good or a bad thing. But I mean, let's not pretend like these guys were saints. They were human. They owned slaves. They massacred Indians. And that is also how America was built. Yeah, it was really sticking it to the fucking British, but I mean, we killed a lot, you know, we killed the people who were here originally and also brought in slaves and used them and didn't want to treat them as humans. So to acknowledge one and not the other is just, you know, that's revisionist history. So gotta tell it like it is. But hope y'all enjoyed the video. Yeah, it's hardcore TDM type shit, you know. I'm kind of good in both, kind of fucking with both of them. But stay tuned because I got more hot content. Yeah, ooh, I'm fucking up. Damn, I gotta get back into it. Stay tuned because I got more hot content dropping soon. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, ring the damn bell so you don't miss none of that hot content I got dropping and all that. I gotta work on this. I'm gonna get back in the groove of shit. But be safe out there, y'all. Don't get smoked. I'm out. Peace. It's been your boy, Agent ANT, repping the Spell Block Agency. I'm out here getting clapped on. Alright, for real. I'm out. Peace.